She walked into that room carrying a folded flag and a dress uniform, so old the gold stitching had gone pale. The men in line behind her laughed. One of them whispered something to another, and they both smirked, eyes tracking her slow, deliberate steps toward the registration desk. She did not look back. She never did. Her name was Eleanor Marsh, and she had driven 4 hours to attend the regional veterans tribute ceremony in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She was 71 years old. She wore her late husband's army dress uniform, pressed, buttoned, and adorned with ribbons she had cleaned with a soft cloth the night before. It was not her husband's uniform. It was hers. Eleanor had served in the United States Army Nurse Corps, completing 2 tours in Vietnam between 1968 and 1970. She had treated men in field hospitals when the ground shook and the lights went out. She had held the hands of boys who did not make it home. She had come home herself to a country that was not ready to thank anyone who had served, let alone a woman who had carried a bedpan and a scalpel through a war zone. She had packed the uniform away in 1972 and had not taken it out for 49 years. She took it out for this. The ceremony was meant to honor veterans of all eras, but by the time Eleanor arrived, the registration line had thinned to a handful of men, most of them younger, most of them wearing newer uniforms or branch hats with pins from Iraq or Afghanistan. They were proud men. They deserved to be. But the moment Eleanor stepped into line, something in the room shifted. "Ma'am, is this a costume event?" one man said. He was maybe 50. He had a friendly face that was currently doing something unfriendly. Eleanor looked at him the way nurses look at patients who are behaving badly. Patient, level, unbothered. "No," she said simply. "Only that uniform looks like it belongs in a museum," another man added. There was laughter, not cruel laughter, but the lazy, casual kind that comes from people who have not yet been corrected. The young woman at the registration desk, a volunteer named Priya, looked up from her clipboard with wide eyes. She did not know what to say. She had not been trained for this particular situation. Eleanor placed her registration form on the desk, smoothed it once with her palm, and stood quietly while Priya processed it. It was at this moment that a man entered the hall from a side door. He was tall. He wore a formal army uniform with 4 stars on each shoulder. He was Major General Howard Calloway, retired, the guest of honor for the evening, a man who had built a career on remembering what others preferred to forget. He stopped walking. He stood very still in the middle of the registration hall, and his eyes were fixed on the badge above Eleanor's left breast pocket. It was a small thing, that badge, tarnished, oval-shaped. It bore the caduceus, the winged staff of medicine, surrounded by a wreath. It was the Army Nurse Corps badge, and it was of the specific type issued only to those who had served in active combat zones during Vietnam. Howard Calloway had seen that badge only a handful of times in his entire career. He walked toward Eleanor. The men who had been laughing watched him cross the floor. He stopped in front of her. He said nothing for a moment. Then he brought his right hand to his brow in a sharp, formal salute. "Nurse Corps," he said, "Vietnam-era field service." Eleanor's chin came up just slightly. "2 tour," she said. 68th Medical Group, Long Binh and then Pleiku. "Pleiku," the general repeated. His voice had changed. It had gone quiet in the way that voices go quiet when they are carrying something heavy. "I had a cousin who came through Pleiku in '69. He always said the nurses at that station saved more lives than anyone ever counted." Eleanor said, "We tried." The general lowered his salute slowly and extended his hand. Eleanor shook it. Her grip, by all accounts, was firm. The men in line had gone completely still. Priya at the registration desk had stopped typing. "Were you checked in?" the general asked Eleanor, as though they were the only 2 people in the room. "Just now," she said. "Good." He turned to the room with the ease of a man used to having rooms pay attention. "This is Army Nurse Corps, Vietnam, 2 tour field service. She was treating casualties before most of the men in this room were born." He paused. If anyone in this building has earned the front row, it is standing right here. The man who had made the museum joke stepped forward. His name, Eleanor would later learn, was Dennis. He was a Gulf War veteran. He had a good heart buried under a careless mouth, which is a combination more common than people like to admit. He said, "Ma'am, I apologize, I didn't know." Eleanor looked at him for a moment. Then she said something that people in that room would repeat for years. "You never have to know someone's story to treat them with dignity. That part comes first." Dennis nodded. He did not argue. Some lessons land cleanly when the timing is right. The general himself escorted Eleanor to the front of the hall. He pulled out her chair. He sat beside her. And during the formal program, when the MC asked attendees to introduce themselves and name their branch and years of service, Eleanor stood when her turn came, straightened her old uniform, and spoke in a voice that filled the room without effort. "Eleanor Marsh, Army Nurse Corps, Vietnam, 68 to 70. The applause began before she finished the sentence. It was not polite applause. It was the kind that comes from the chest. Eleanor drove home that night with the window down a little, even though it was November and cold. She said later that she needed the air, that something inside her that had been closed for a very long time had opened up in that hall, and she needed to feel the outside world moving past her while she got used to the feeling. She had not worn that uniform in 49 years because no one had ever asked her to, because the welcome home, for nurses, for women, for those who had served in the unglamorous corners of war, had not come the way it should have. She had accepted that silence. She had built a life around it, a good life, a full one, but she had never quite set down the weight of being overlooked. She set it down in Harrisburg. There is something we often misunderstand about recognition. We think it is about the person giving it. We think it is a gift that flows from the powerful to the quiet. But what happened in that hall suggests otherwise. The general's salute mattered not because of his rank, but because of his attention, because he looked, because he stopped walking and he saw a badge that most people would have walked right past. The lesson Eleanor carried home was not about the validation of one old ceremony. It was something quieter and more lasting. Service does not expire. Sacrifice does not have a shelf life. And the grace a person carries after decades of being unseen is one of the most dignified things in the world, even if no one has thought to say so yet. You do not need a general to tell you that someone's story matters. You can decide that yourself, right now, in whatever room you happen to be standing in. Look a little closer. You might see something worth saluting. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone in your own life who served quietly and was thanked too late, please take a moment to leave a comment below. Share a name, share a story. This channel exists for exactly that. Like this video if it stayed with you, and following to Soul Relief Stories for new videos every day. There are more stories like this one waiting, stories of quiet courage, of dignity earned in the dark, and of the moments when the world finally catches up. We will see you in the next one.